Chapter 11. Atheism, Morality, Law and the State. The rise of antinomianism within the Church has made possible the rise of the humanistic state. Since all morality and law rest on religious premises, for the Church to undermine the universal application of God's law has been to surrender any relevance to problems of social order, to deny the sovereign power of God over every realm, including law and the state, and to retreat into practical polytheism. In the United States, 50 million evangelical church members who should be champions of the Lord's crown rights over civil government are indifferent to Christ's kingship. The result is that civil government reflects a principle of atheism rather than biblical faith. Both evangelicals and modernists are united in their affirmation of antinomianism. Andrew Jackson Young, while the U.S. United Nations ambassador, expressed his faith in an interview. Quote, "Morality for me is thinking clearly through the alternatives and making a decision that is best for the largest number of people. I learned my foreign policy and theology class, not in the church. I was reading Reinhold Niebuhr, Paul Tillich, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. My understanding of Jesus Christ is that he came to fulfill the law, and you're trying to talk in terms of a moral law. I don't believe in it." End quote. We are saved by God's grace in and through the atonement of Christ, but we are not saved to be lawless, but to be faithful to God's righteousness or justice as set forth in His law. The law is our means of sanctification. Humanism has deep roots in history, and the first and classic statement thereof is in Genesis 3:5, "Every man as his own God, knowing or determining good and evil for himself." Atheism is a late and logical development in the history of humanism. Although an undercurrent in previous Western history, it was only in the 19th century, or in the late 18th, that it became a vocal and open movement. In Ludwig Feuerbach, 1804 to 1872, atheism found its philosopher and its classic expression. Feuerbach saw the idea of God as an objectification of human ideas and ideals. Hence, the idea of God for Feuerbach was a product of human experience. What man says about God reveals what man feels about man. Thus, when theology says, quote, "God is love," end quote, all we have is a revelation of how important love is to man. All theological statements were thus for Feuerbach psychological manifestations. For Karl Marx, using Feuerbach, theological statements were expressions of the ruling class's exploitative mythology. Hence, for him, religion was the opium of the people. For the 18th century French philosophe, the criticism of religion was the starting point of philosophy. Autonomous man could only be free with the death of God. Bakunin the anarchist held, quote, "If there is a God, man is a slave, but man is free, therefore there is no God." End quote. Beginning with the premise of the non-existence of God and the autonomy and freedom of man, Feuerbach reduced the idea of God to human experience. This reduction placed man's psychology in the forefront as the key to life, and with Freud, psychology supplanted philosophy and religion as the central cultural force. With atheism, the logic of humanism came into clear focus. Benjamin Franklin was an early champion of a humanistic morality. His well-known proverb, "Honesty is the best policy," summarized the new faith. Honesty now rested not in God's command, but on human utility. The key factor is the best policy. For Franklin, honesty was indeed the best policy. But for Nietzsche, dishonesty replaced honesty as the moral way, that is, as the best policy. The result has been the triumph of humanistic laws replacing God's law and the rise of reasons of state as the rationale of law. The modern state legislates, operates, and plans as if there were no God. Its basic and implicit premise is that God and Christianity are dead. As a result, we have a new establishment of religion undergirding the law, the atheistic humanistic state. At the same time, atheism, as an organized force, has receded because over-success has made unnecessary any formal atheistic cause. Its premises are now part of church, state, and school. The Victorian age broke with Christianity while paying lip service to a surface observance of moral forms. Its religious goals were Hellenic and ancient Greece and Athens, not Israel and Jerusalem, its spiritual homeland. Step by step, since then, the surface forms of Christianity have been dropped until, as MacIntyre has noted, quote, the point has been reached at which physics and politics, using both terms in their broadest sense, define a world in which theism has no place at all. End quote. Autonomous man now makes his own laws. He asserts his freedom from God and his freedom to accept or reject God. The Arminian emphasis on free will supports and lives at ease with atheism. To cite MacIntyre again, quote, but if belief in truths of a factual kind cannot be chosen, then belief that can be chosen cannot have as its object truths of a factual kind. Therefore, if modern Christian theology treats Christian belief as belief that can be chosen, the truths of Christian orthodoxy must be regarded as something other than factual in kind. End quote. Churchmen have progressively watered down the content of Christianity so that it is well said that, quote, theists are offering atheists less and less in which to disbelieve. End quote. At present, law has been severed from God and is in essence atheistic. It presupposes a sovereign man, not the sovereign God. Churchmen, by their acceptance of contemporary non-biblical law, have given assent to atheism as the religion of society. The result has been the virtual disappearance of atheism as an organized movement because our antinomian churches advocate precisely what atheism worked to introduce: the supplanting of theocentric biblical law with humanistic status law. Atheism in the 20th century has conquered church, state, and school. The atheistic vision of a social order, stripped of God's law, has been realized. The disastrous fact in all this is that pietistic antinomianism has been atheism's greatest ally. The theologians of the Church have stripped the world of the glory and government of God. I am regularly told by such men that the idea of a Christian state is theologically and eschatologically impossible. In the, quote, gospel age, unquote, such men say, the world is under the dominion of Satan. As R. J. Ten Pass shows in The Lordship of Christ, one school of thought denies that in this era Christ can be Lord, or is even to be called Lord. Our present predicament has been over 3 centuries in developing. It will not disappear overnight. A serious fallacy in contemporary thought is an inheritance from Greece, the deus ex machina concept, that is, God out of a machine. For the ancient Greeks, the universe generated itself out of chaos. The gods hence did not control all things, but were themselves controlled by fate. As superior beings, the gods could at best at times interrupt history and, out of context, rescue men and causes. Thus, Paris was snatched away from certain death on the battlefield to be dropped into Helen's bedroom and a happier encounter. Too often Christians want a like rescue, one which does violence to God's providential universe and history. There is no conflict between the supernatural and natural in Scripture because both are God's creation. His way with us, with history, and with all things is usually, as in Isaiah 28:10, quote, for precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little. In God's universe, walls are built from the foundations up. To expect otherwise is sin. The humanists, Our modern Greeks also hold to the deus ex machina concept, but without the gods. For them, the sudden saving intervention in history is by man, and this means revolution. For Karl Marx, revolution is the Greek god whose deus ex machina intervention in history rights all wrongs. The results of this faith have been slavery and death, not salvation. All too many churchmen share this faith. They are prone to think of armed resistance when they have neither laboured in terms of God's law nor used the legal avenues available to them. Such a humanistic shortcut is not honoured by God.